I'm James Cole Morrison. I bitch about it, so you fuckers can listen. Well, popcorn munched, shitty drink drank. I have just come back from watching The Batman. Oh dear. Oh dearie dear. Oh dearie dear. Oh, you know what? Nah, it wasn't all that bad, to be honest with you. This film has garnered very high praise thus far in its opening week. I don't know the box office at the moment as it stands, but this was a fine film. It was not as good as the rumblings may suggest, but this was okay. To be honest with you, I was going into this film not with necessarily high expectations, but there were certain elements of the film that I didn't sort of like the look of, to be perfectly honest with you. In particular, Robert Pattinson. Now, I know not a lot of people was going to give this guy a fair shake because of the Twilight sort of history and whatnot. Robert Pattinson in himself is a very good actor. I can't really take anything away from the man. I didn't have much doubt in his abilities. The thing I sort of took umbrage with was the design, really. I don't know if you heard the Thinking and Drinking episode where we speak to one of our good friends, Chris from Free Drinks In. But I really don't like the mask, like the helmet that Robert Pattinson is wearing. I think it sort of pays, or it tries to pay homage to sort of 1960s Batman, because of the sort of like the shape of it. It almost looks exactly identical without the sort of stenciled eyebrows. It's almost got a little bit of definition in the eyebrows and just a massive fucking head. I mean, if you painted my head black, it'd look like a fucking Batman helmet. I mean, I made a comment that it basically looks like a gimp suit with fucking bunny ears and the zip cut out. That's basically sort of my feelings. Looking at it in the actual film, looking at it in the film, it wasn't as bad as sort of the still shots would suggest. It looked fine, but there were other elements of the design of the Batsuit that I really didn't like. For example, his forearm is very chunky. Like, it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but it almost like it looks like it sort of shoots darts or whatnot. I think it's actually sort of like a personal computer or something on his arm. And I think I saw him using it in one scene in particular. It just doesn't look great. And one thing I noticed I just couldn't keep my eye off was his sort of collar, his lapel. It's sort of sticking out. I think they're going for like a Phantom of the Opera sort of vibe, or maybe it's sort of part of the Nightfall comics where he had that sort of a sticky outy lapel. But as soon as you notice it, you can't stop looking at it. It almost looks like Victorian Batman in its design, but it didn't look great. It really didn't. It was almost I mean, I think it was try to pay homage for Victorian Batman, or even the first ever sort of Batman. So I think there was sort of elements of that in that film, and the first ever the Bat sort of horror film in the 1920s. What the film that inspired Bob Kane and Robert Finger to come up with the whole Batman in the first place. There were perhaps sort of elements of that in the design, but overall I didn't quite like it. There was a lot of angst in it. I know, like, Bruce Wayne is meant to be a broody son of a bitch, but it almost felt like manufactured angst. There wasn't anything organic. I mean, at one point, you had the character Bruce Wayne brooding in his fucking cellar, listening to fucking Nirvana, with fucking like his little black eyeliner sort of running down his face. He honestly, it wasn't a good look. It didn't feel very genuine. Nevertheless, the film is very stylized. It has its own unique sort of feel and vibe. It doesn't feel like any other Batman film, which is great. I mean, you can sort of point out like sort of the Nolan ones, the Tim Burton ones, the Schumacher ones, even Batman v Superman. As much of a flop that was, it had its own sort of feel, like sort of the Affleck sort of flicks. This, in its own right, felt like a sort of noir detective story. Although it wasn't as fun because it didn't sort of line up the sort of suspects all too well. But even so, there was elements of this film where it felt sort of intelligent. It felt fun in what it was trying to do. But for me, it sort of fell a little bit flat. I mean, what makes a Batman film fun for me is basically sort of like the chase, the fighting, the sort of the villain. And the villain in this film was fantastic. I mean, he was good, but they sort of make a mistake in sort of not wrapping it up in the second act, but basically, without giving too many spoilers, there isn't really a climactic finish. There isn't sort of like a one-on-one confrontation with the villain, really. That being sort of a Riddler. The Riddler design itself was quite haunting. I mean, again, looking at the sort of like the still shots of a design, it looked terrible, like really, really bad, awful wise. Like, yeah, I mean, basically, I sort of envisioned. I sort of compared it to the Gimp from 9mm. This awful Nicolas Cage film about a sort of like a snuff film. There was this like monstrous villain who was basically sort of in a gimp mask with glasses. Who was sort of like a part of the main antagonist in the film. He sort of gave that sort of vibes. There were sort of clever sort of parts of it, but I didn't feel that the Batman was sort of that much of a good detective, really. I didn't feel that he was sort of utilising his brain and sort of working this stuff out to the best of his ability. So, yeah, again, it's sort of falling flat. One thing I will say, the choreography in this film, the actual fighting was excellent. Like, really good. And some of it looked like it was done in one take, which was absolutely fabulous. Robert Pattinson should be really commended for the choreography. It was really, really well done. One thing I will say is what really irritated the piss out of me. I mean, you notice in certain Batman films, they don't use a lot of guns. Like, but very rarely do they have like a shit ton of guns, or they get a chance to sort of fire their guns. This version of Batman just got shot constantly, and whether it was this Kevlar suit or bullets just sort of flew off of him, almost like the Ninja Turtles in that shit. Like a Michael Bay film. It's like sparks of shit just sort of flew off it, and they were shooting him to a point where I just thought, you know what, one of these guys is going to hit him in his fucking mouth. Like, he just got shot so many fucking times. I mean, you sort of, in the films and even in the video games, he sort of has that sort of, you have that Predator mode where he's sort of evasive, he's using the shadows. There wasn't really a lot of that. It was a lot of just attacking and a lot of people just shooting him. And it just felt a bit silly to me. Aside from that, the casting appeared pretty damn good, if I'm honest. There wasn't a bad actor out of the bunch, to tell you the truth. Even, I mean, the weakest, I would argue, was Kravis's daughter. But she was fine. She was good. She had this very corny line in the middle about sort of like all these white elitists, sort of these corrupt white assholes taking power, and we've got to beat them down. It did make me cringe, that line, I have to be honest with you. And she was just sort of talking to Batman next to his little sort of like searchlight sort of thing, to the point where I thought, you know what, that's going to lead to the ending. Like, this Riddler character is going to be in cahoots with the woman running for mayor or something like that. I thought that was what they were going for with a sort of like a throwaway line like that. Thankfully, that's not the direction they went for. There was a cringe-worthy hint for the sequel during sort of the end of the film, where the Riddler character gets to converse with another person of note. Did not. Probably the weakest part of the film, to tell you the truth. Very cringy, very not very good. And again, the ending itself, even though it was smart and you sort of felt that the villain kind of got his way a little bit, there was no real confrontation. There was no sort of like almost any stakes really near the end. It didn't feel worth watching really, to tell you the truth. After a certain point, the Christopher Nolan films are quite long. I felt this sort of dragged on a bit, and to be fair, I think the majority of the Nolan films were longer than this one. Some positive bits. So the music is on point, was very good. Cinematography is on theme. They got the actual city of Gotham, much like the the Batman films of old, 89, Batman Returns. It sort of felt like it had its own identity. Like, the big criticism I had with the Nolan films is that the sort of still shots of the city looked like they were filmed at location in Chicago or Detroit. It looked like just at parts of America. It didn't feel like it had its own sort of identity. Whereas this location, wherever they filmed it, it looked like a standalone city. It looked like Gotham. You know, it had Gothic architecture. It looked like it had unique structure. Buildings didn't look recognizable like they did in the Nolan films, which is great. It's very commendable. Wasn't a lot of gliding in this film. Batman doesn't glide quite a bit, and the one time in the film where he does glide, they have this sort of like camera angle where it's sort of like the camera is showing Patterson's face while it's gliding. It almost looks like the glitch from Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition, where if you're flying and you sort of change camera angles, it sort of like shows the fucking character. It's really weird looking glitch. I'm sure Fat will find it, but it was one of the weaker parts of the film, I have to say. It looked very fake and corny, and I didn't like it at all. He doesn't really glide a lot at all. I have to say that was a shame, because I thought that was the best part of Batman Begins, really. Like seeing him using the grapple gun and just sort of literally using that smart cape. I thought it was really cool. The Batmobile. Now, I didn't like the look of the Batmobile. They only sort of utilised it once, and it worked. I actually thought, with the first shots to get it again, didn't like the shots of the Batmobile at first, but yeah, I felt it was too minimalistic. It just looked like a normal car, but it's the screen time for the Batmobile was good. It looked menacing, and there were some hints of original designs from the comics. Like, you could sort of see the little bat head with on the bonnet there, which was pretty neat. But yeah, overall, it was a fine film. You would enjoy it if you saw it, but there's no incentive for me to go watch this again. There's no incentive for me to get the DVDs. I sort of had my fill, really. Not terrible. Had its moments. You know, I did sort of grow to like the style as the movie went along, but yeah, slightly underwhelming as well. Like I say, there's no incentive for me to revisit this, and not too keen on the sequel. I suppose the good thing about this is there's a massive outcry for sort of like the Ben Batfleck, you know, like the Ben Affleck version of Batman. I can't imagine that the rumours that this film has to hit 800 million and to sort of draw even as true. I think that's a lot of sort of rumour spread by the sort of Batfleck fanboys. But there was, without a doubt, a high budget involved in this film. Like, there was some like proper sort of special effects. There was some CGI, but there was some actual physical standalone special effects. So obviously, it would have cost a lot of money. So I generally don't know what they need to make to break even. I couldn't imagine it was as much as sort of reported, but yeah, I can sort of see this was a very expensive feature film. But again, a little bit underwhelming, to tell you the truth, really. So it lost a lot of momentum, I'd say, sort of as the movie sort of moved forward. But still it's fine. It's his first outing. Maybe the sequel will be better. I'm sure there will be a sequel. I'm sure film is going to garner some success at the box office. And this won't be the last we'll see of Robert Pattinson as the role of Batman. I can guarantee you that. But like I said, I think the good thing is that we're going to see two versions of Batman. We're going to see Ben Affleck hopefully reprise his role in the Flash movie. And I don't see why these two versions can't coexist together. In fact, I mean, there's plenty of incentive for DC to do that, or Warner Brothers to do that, and make a shit ton of money. There might be a bit of overexposure, but to the end of the day, I mean, Bat fans are fucking rampant, and you can't get enough of this shit. So I think it's very likely we're going to see the two versions of Batman. Like one movie each year, perhaps sort of re-emerge. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like there's the opportunity for that is there, and I don't think people are going to be against that, really, to be honest with you. Anyway, this is Morrisonii, and take care, enjoy it. It's a one thumb up for me. Like and subscribe and all that shit. I'll see you soon.